Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm here on behalf of 124 medical research charities, the charities that fund medical research in the UK. And I'm here really to try and talk about what impact the directive had on the research that we've been trying to fund and what we hope for the new regulation. It was really welcome here to hear from the Commission that the work that we've been doing as a collective of charities and other organisations to try and encourage change has been well received, and so we'd like to do more of that. Just a little bit of background. The UK is quite unusual in the amount of money that's spent by the public from their own money rather than by taxes on medical research. So just some numbers for you. 9 million people donate every month to medical research charities. 70% of the people in the UK will donate in a year to medical research. So that's compared to 39% in the rest of Europe. Only the Netherlands has got a higher rate of donation than the UK. The amount of money that our charity spends is about £1 billion a year. That represents a third of public spending in the UK on medical research. So when I sit here talking about medical research funders, it is within that sort of wider picture. Obviously, clinical trials are really important, both to those who want to fund medical research because they want to understand how to do new treatments, but also for those that can't afford to fund the trial but want to make sure that there is a new treatment or therapy available for people with their condition. We've mentioned rare and ultra-rare conditions. There are other areas where funders can't afford to fund the study themselves but really want to make sure that good quality research happens and that the research is available to people. So the regulations on clinical trials are important for both these peoples. About the EU Trials Directive, as has been said, had a massive impact. It's been applied inconsistently. It's really difficult if you're doing multi-stage, multinational studies. If you're trying to do a study in a rare disease, you need to have that multinational impact, but it's not going to happen for you. It's been a massive administrative burden, and the time taking has been huge. Our colleagues at Cancer Research UK have said that for studies that were awarded between 2006 and 2007, 25 studies, it took an average of 621 days. That's almost 2 years for the study from the time it was awarded to the time it started and including its first patient. That's almost 2 years where money has been allocated from the public donating, from sitting in a bath of beans to full medical research. Well, that's how they get the money, effectively, until that money can actually be used for the purpose it was meant for. And so again, it's not just about saying, oh, isn't it terrible for the academics, isn't it a pain for the regulators? Actually, this is an ethical issue for us to cover. We know the final thing that's been a real problem, I think, in the UK is that there's been a one-size-fits-all approach. So a study of an off-label use of a drug has to have the same level of regulation of a first-in-man or a first-in-patient new chemical entity. And there's been no difference in the amount of regulation that's been applied to that. In the UK, we've responded to that. In the time that the directive's been in place, we've been looking and working with the various people involved in the timelines involved for approvals to reduce that down. I think that's working really well. There's still some work to go, but we're getting there. And also the UK has developed a 3-tier risk adaptation approach, where it said, let's look at the risk of this medical entity, this IMP, on this patient group. And if the risk is low, then it should be approached as low. If it's medium, then we can do it in a different way. And if it's a high risk, then we'd have to put the full weight of the regulation behind it with a number of things. First of all, the scope. The ability to have a 2-layer of risk is really helpful. However, I'd like 3 layers of risk. I know that in conversations in the UK that we've had, we've been told that that's something that, I'm not sure again if it's, again, excuse my lack of knowledge, if it was the Commission or the Parliament that was saying that 3 layers was too much and 2 was sufficient. But again, I think the model that we had in the UK has worked very well, and I'd really like to hope that the Commission can look at the UK model again and perhaps take a look at that. The clarification that Rapporteur has done in the report to say that studies of drugs that are routinely used off-label aren't even classified as trials is very welcome, but again, I don't think it gets to the nub of the repurposing of drugs, particularly in cancer, where you have a large portfolio of drugs that could be reused, but because they've been used in a different licence, they have to go through the whole process all again. And again, as a colleague, as Michelle has said, that's generally an academic study. It's not being done by pharma companies. They're not really interested in doing that piece of work. So again, we have to think look at that more. The single portal, again, is really important, particularly for those international studies or transnational studies. But with any big IT project, I have to say, is it doable? Is it doable in the time? And again, I think we need to feel comfortable that that's going to work. Insurance, I think, again, is very important, particularly again for transnational studies. It's not been so much of a problem, I think, in the UK. I think our approach has been that it's been managed within either university insurance or within your insurance system with the NHS, but we understand that won't work Europe-wide. But again, I think there's a need for us in the UK, particularly for the funds I work with, to feel assured that it's going to work, that what's being promised will work. And I really welcome the idea of patient involvement, which comes through strongly in the rapporteur's report, talking about patients being involved in planning the study, and in designing the patient information and the consent forms to make sure they really work. Again, that's kind of things that are happening already in the UK, but perhaps we want to take that a little bit further and say, should the patients also be involved in looking at lay reporting the study, to make sure that when the study reported and the clinical research form is available for general usage, that actually the lay summary is indeed lay, it isn't just written in a kind of a version of gobbledygook, but it's still very scientific. And there are a couple of things that I would also like to add. I think the clarity of terms have been mentioned, and you talked about very helpfully about the kind of clarification between clinical studies and clinical trials. I think we also have to think about, there are studies that don't involve IMPs, but they involve devices. And we also talked about the advanced medicines, and I think medicine now in the 21st century actually is involving all those three things, and we need to understand how those directives work together. And it's particularly for funders and for researchers to ensure they know where they're meant to be going on these things. And transparency, again, it's really important to us that when trials are approved for investigation and the licensed product, the data that comes from those studies is made available. And again, I just want to make sure that the work that the EMA is doing on making sure that licensed products are made available and all the data behind that, I'm involved in conversations about how we can do that, that information is linked up with the conversation and the information in the rapporteur's report about the EU database to make sure that they do absolutely fit in. I'm sure they will, but it's just helpful to underline it. Because in the end, it's about the patient. The patient needs to understand what's going on. They need to understand why they've been asked to be involved in the study, and need to understand when that study finishes, what happened. And if the information is not available in an understandable format, then we've lost half the work. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.